Geography and You presents.
Hello and welcome to SDGs on Trial, a GNY Live podcast series where we engage with voices shaping the future of our environment, society, and policy. I'm your host, Hiteshika, and today's episode brings focus to one of the most vital and contested resources of our time, water. Even as the world moves toward achieving Sustainable Development Goal 6, which promises universal and equitable access to safe water and sanitation, questions persist about how these aspirations unfold in practice, especially within the Indian context. Our global SDG frameworks, aligned with India's ecological diversity, socio-economic inequities, and the lived realities of its communities. To explore these questions and more, we are joined by Mr. Himanshu Thakkar, a renowned water expert and coordinator of the South Asian Network on Dams, Rivers, and People. With decades of work in water governance, environmental justice, and critical evaluations of large infrastructure projects, Mr. Thakkar brings a grounded and incisive perspective on what truly equitable water access should look like. Guiding the conversation is our discussant, Dr. Sulagna Chattopadhyay, Editor-in-Chief of Geography and You, an expert in climate communication and environmental governance, whose work bridges science, policy, and public discourse. Let's begin this vital conversation. Over to you, Dr. Chattopadhyay.
Thank you, Hiteshika, and welcome, Mr. Himanshu Thakkar. It is an honor to have you on our show today.
Thank you.
So we are talking today about the SDG 6, which is all about water, sustainability of water, quality, wastewater, and specific to your area of work, which is rivers. Can you give us a sense of what is this ecosystem of rivers in India? Basically, what are we seeing? What are we seeing on a scale of 1 to 10? How would you rank India's rivers? Where are we? 1 being the best and 10 being the worst.
Well, firstly, I think we are very blessed countries in terms of rivers. The number of rivers that we have, the variety of the rivers. I mean, very few countries in the world have this kind of wealth of rivers, actually. And along with the rivers, which are actually made alive by the monsoon. So monsoon is another major blessing we have. But if you look at, and India is a very interesting country in the sense it is possibly the country in the world where the rivers are worshipped, rivers are prayed. Every ritual, every social gathering, we talk about the rivers are there. Every festival, the rivers are, many of the festivals, the rivers are the center of it. And yet, our rivers are possibly in the worst state today. In many senses, in terms of encroachments, in terms of mining, indiscriminate mining, in terms of the water quality in the rivers, in terms of the dams and barrages that we have built to divert the water, and the amount of water that the rivers have, how many rivers go. And there is our politicians have prevalent unscientific notion that whatever water goes into the sea is a waste. Totally unscientific, but that's how politicians see the rivers. So because of this kind of the situation of the rivers is pretty bad. But the worst is the mindset of our governor, our rulers. The rulers' mindset is that rivers are expendable. We need to get whatever we want to out of it. It doesn't matter what happens to the rivers. So if you look at the biodiversity in the rivers, the mining that happens in the river, and when you build a dam, how do you do cost benefit about the rivers? Or what do you do to ensure the river continues to flow and remain alive? And our water lifeline is groundwater. But that groundwater gets recharged majorly. One part is rivers and through other ecosystems functions. And even there, the the state situation is pretty bad. So in most parameters that define a river, one of the key definition of a river is in terms of connectivities. Upstream, downstream connectivity, the lateral connectivity with the floodplains, and the vertical connectivity to the groundwater. All the ground connectivities are in jeopardy in most rivers at most sites. So this is the state of our rivers in terms of scale of 1 to 10. Well, I would rather put it at 20 rather than anywhere better. Yeah.
Oh my. So now you have of course opened a lot of questions that we can move around with. So let's start with certain specific rivers. For example, what we had an earlier conversation, and you said rivers that flow through urban spaces. So if we can talk about those rivers, some, I don't know, you would be able to be in a better position to tell us. So Ganga, Krishna, Yamuna, Hindan, and then you have these other ones which are Jojari and all the other ones that they're all severely, Indrayani, they're all very, very severely impacted because of urban spaces around them. So what is it that we can do, in this concept of the develop an urban river concept? And then if we can talk about how to, you have these riverfront developments which we have heard about, and we tend to want to do it everywhere, and whether those kind of developments are indeed an urban plan or urban idea wise an excellent idea. What do you feel?
So the reason I highlight urban rivers specifically, that way they're not different than the rest of the country, the rivers. But the key point is that number of key points. One is that urban areas, we have an opportunity of creating a model of how do we treat a river. And the first step would be having an understanding of the river. What is the river in urban area? And secondly, having a policy framework. Because there are, India is a diverse country and there are different kinds of ecological situations across the country. But what we need for urban areas is a urban water policy, which will also guide us how do we treat urban rivers. So in terms of the rainwater, in terms of the flood plains, in terms of the encroachments, in terms of the pollution, in terms of sewage treatment and recycle, in terms of industrial water treatment and recycle, in terms of the groundwater recharge, in terms of how the water bodies, which are integral part of the urban water system, in terms of the drainage, the rivers are essentially also a drainage mechanism, and how the whole urban area needs to be connected with the drainage system. And we need to a live drainage system, which will ensure that there is a separation of the sewage with respect to storm water, the rainwater. So there are these various components of urban river are there. And urban areas is a small area, relatively, compared to the whole river basin. If you see, it's a smaller area. And it's an area where we have a major monitoring oversight is there, very much there. And we can possibly ensure a better compliance with what we need to do with the water system, river system. And that's why, and lastly, in the context of climate change, we need increasing frequency of flooding in urban areas. We see that. And we also see increasing intensity of flooding in the river areas, and increasing extent of flooding area. So the extent is increasing, the intensity is increasing, and the frequency is increasing. In that context, the river has a very important role to play. Why it is happening? Why is the river not? When does the flooding happen? When the system is not able to either absorb, store water, recharge water, or drain water. When the total input into the system is more than the capacity to store, recharge, or drain, there is flooding. And that happens because our capacity, our urban river system's capacity to hold water, to store water, to recharge water, and to drain water has gone down for a number of reasons. So if we have an urban water policy which tells us how do we treat urban rivers to take care of all these issues, we have an opportunity of creating a better river management system. And about the riverfront management you have mentioned, it's actually a bit of a serious problem that we are creating for ourselves. The Sabarmati is the most celebrated example of riverfront development in India, but Sabarmati is no longer a river. In Ahmedabad, the Sabarmati is only a canal, a cemented canal on both sides, and which only has stored water. And the water that is there in that river, that stored canal, is not even Sabarmati water. It's Narmada water. It's the Narmada water, canal, which passes upstream from Ahmedabad, releases water into the Sabarmati river, because Sabarmati river its own has no water of its own. And that water gets stored in the so-called riverfront development area within Ahmedabad. And we are happy and celebrating it as a riverfront development. It's actually, there is no river there. It's complete destruction of river. And if that is our dream for rivers in the rest of the urban areas in India, God save us. Maybe we can't save us. Yeah.
So from drainage to drain, because you just words matter a lot. I'll just give you one example. We talk about traditional medicine or traditional knowledge, and then traditional is also used as somebody who is traditional, thereby very backward looking. But I met a gentleman the other day who said we should stop saying traditional knowledge and say evidence based knowledge. So probably we should stop using the word drainage and use something else.
Function of the river, actually.
Yeah, I agree, but I'm just this is on a lighter note, please. So there are, for example, you have talked about ecological flow. You have this was a concept that came in very early 2000s. We were talking about this a lot, and then we don't talk about it anymore. So now when you say Sabarmati doesn't have a water of its own, then that means there is no ecological flow of the river, and that means it doesn't sustain biodiversity in any portion of its river as such. Yamuna, I don't know, it seems to be in a similar kind of fashion it's going. Ganga, in summer, I have seen it almost going dry, which was like such a shock for me. So I don't know where the water goes. You would be able to tell us a little more about what really happens to Ganga as well. And it's such a resplendent river, to see it in such a narrow pathway, So it was quite shocking. So if you can just tell us a little bit about what is this idea of ecological flow? Where does it come from? How are dams related to ecological flow? And a sense of why we don't talk about it.
So I think we, as our organization, South Asian Network on Dams, Rivers and People, was one of the first one to raise the issue of environment flow. We started raising in 1998. And we specifically raised in the context of building of hydropower projects in Himachal Pradesh. At that time, we very intensely look at the environment governance of hydropower and dams. And we look at the environment impact assessment, the public consultation process, and so on. And when we looked at it, we wrote to the authorities that the projects that we were reviewing at that period of time, those were projects like Alayan Dohangan, Karcham Wangtu, and some other hydropower projects. And we said that these projects are stopping, the dams of these projects are stopping the water flow. And immediate downstream from the dam, there is no water in most of the non-monsoon months. In monsoon, they have to release water because there is excess water. But in non-monsoon month, there is no water. Even in a perennial river like Satluj or Bias or Ravi in Himachal Pradesh. And we said that this is complete destruction of the river. If there is no flow in the river, what is the river? What is the meaning of that river? And this is a perennial river. It's not a seasonal river. So then there was a good district magistrate of the district we were dealing at the time, Kinnaur district. So he then said that, yeah, I totally agree with you. He asked us some question, where is the good model? How do we calculate and so on? And that's how actually then, at that time, then Himachal Pradesh was the first state in the country to actually require that when a dam is built on the river, you can't stop all the water. You have to release certain amount of water downstream. It's very small amount actually. The quantity they have prescribed was only 10% of the minimum observed flow, which was very small quantity. It is not sufficient for the river, but it was a first step. But the lo and behold, the shocking part was there. The project developer challenged this notification also, saying that if we start releasing water for the river, there will be no water. I mean, the project will no longer be economically viable. And then NHPC, which was building the project, NHPC also went to the court, and the Ministry of Environment and Forest, which was one of the parties in the court, Ministry of Environment and Forest, imagine, which is supposed to protect the ecosystems and rivers, told the court that there is no law in India which requires the river should have water. They opposed Himachal Pradesh that notification for a small quantity of water. But then we have traveled a long distance from there. That was the situation in the year 2000. Then, we kept pushing, number of other people kept pushing, and ultimately we have environment flow accepted, particularly when Jairam Ramesh was the environment minister. At that time, he accepted a lot more than others. And then they started asking that every project should release certain amount of water, and they gave seasonal flows. So in monsoon, this amount of water, this they gave in percentage.
Okay.
In non-monsoon, immediately post-monsoon, this much, and in dry season, this much. So that started at that time around 2008-9, and in 2000, then there was a long struggle for environment flows even in Ganga, and ultimately in 2018 a notification came about where the government of India said that okay, Ganga also needs to have environment flow wherever they are building dams, and they gave somewhat, and that's also only up till Narora barrage they have given environment flows, not beyond that. And until then also what they have given is very small quantity. But the key point is, how do you ensure the compliance with that notification? That's not happening. So in general, the situation is pretty bad in the sense that the government doesn't have a river policy actually, which will say that okay, river needs to continue to have flow. Rivers continue to have flow because that's how the rivers survive. The biodiversity in the river survive. The functionalities of the rivers survive. Without that, you can't have. In Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, hydropower project situation is so bad that when someone dies, they want to Arthi Visarjan, they want to release the remains in the river, there is no water flow. So they have to request the government to release some amount of flow so that they can release the last remains of the people who have died. That's the situation of rivers in Himachal and Uttarakhand today. They have to actually request even for that. And this is the environment flows. Today also situation is not particularly good. Yeah.
So, but we do have some idea about this environmental flow right now. I mean, at least it's an accepted idea. That much is there, correct? Although you are saying that we are not following it to the letter and spirit, but then there is an idea which has come about. But tell me about dams. Some countries are dismantling their dams. Which are these countries that are dismantling dams, and why?
So the largest number of dams are decommissioned. The word used is decommissioning. So decommission are either in US or Europe. So in many European countries, but in US, and there are some happening in one or two other places, but mostly in Europe and US.
Okay.
The US has dismantled, decommissioned more than 2,000 dams since 1992 around.
Why?
More than 2,500, I think. And Europe also around 2,000 dams since that period. They are doing it for a number of different reasons. See, one thing is that in US, every hydropower or dam project which has to get relicensed. After a certain period, it has to apply for a relicense with, say, agency like FERC, Federal Electricity Regulatory Commission. And FERC, when they come up for relicensing, they say, okay, the river state is this, but there is no flow, or you need environment flows, and or you need to provide a fish ladder or fish pass or something to ensure that the biodiversity continues to survive. At the moment, it is not. And when they do that, the developer has to ensure that, and it has to bear all the expenses to achieve that. The other option the developer has is that, okay, if you think that option is too expensive and your economics is not working out, then you can decommission. Then it is your responsibility to decommission the dam. So it is in such a circumstances that a lot of developers are decommissioning the dam. They are saying it's much more expensive to create all these facilities, and they are decommissioning it. There are some other dams that are decommissioned because the dams has become too old and it has become unsafe to continue to sustain that.
Okay.
And there are others where the indigenous people are fighting for it and achieving victory. They are saying that our fish, particularly salmon in US, is completely destroyed because of the dams, and we need to survive, and we can't survive without them. So there again, because of the need for biodiversity, continued biodiversity in the river, the dams are getting decommissioned. So Europe, the similar situation is there. For all these reasons, the dams are getting decommissioned.
Yeah. So can India, but India's, they're getting new dams done. We have new dams even after Tista, the Sikkim dam with the Tista River. What is the name of that? Chumthang. Yeah. So even after Chumthang tragedy, we are remaking the dam. So in your view, that is not such a good idea?
No, in fact, that particular dam is a particularly very bad idea because the risk of the Glof glacial lake outburst flood continues to remain, and the dam they are now building is not going to be able to take care. In fact, they have manipulated the whole thing. Even the new dam, the spillway capacity, they've increased it to some extent, but it is still much lower than what is required. And they are doing it manipulation because they know it's economically much more expensive to build spillway capacity that is really required. So in that case, in general also, see, misconception in India is that our food security is because of the dams like Bhakhara and others, irrigation.
Also energy, irrigation,
all of this,
energy needs, irrigation.
The reality in India is that most of the water that we are using today, including irrigation, more than 2/3 of the irrigation, that the irrigated area gets irrigation from groundwater. So drinking water, 85% of the rural areas and 60% of the urban areas comes from groundwater. So in last 4.5 decades, more than 90% of the additional water that we are using in last 45 years has all come from groundwater. So it is not from dams that we are getting our food security, water security, or other benefits. It's mostly from groundwater. So,
but local level, you don't think that it benefits the local level in any manner? That there are these nodes of development that come about in certain areas because of dams. You think?
Firstly, it is the local people who are the worst sufferers when a dam comes up. When in terms of the submergence, deforestation, and the drying up the river in downstream area. In every impact, it's the local area which suffer most and the first. The point is there are some people who benefit, definitely. There are contractors, there are consultants, there are dam builders, companies, there are equipment suppliers, there are cement suppliers, steel suppliers.
Yeah, there's lot of economic spin-off through the whole thing. Yes, of course.
Yeah, but the point is that if, this is one key example, key thing. Have we done a post facto analysis, economic analysis, even pure economic analysis of a single dam in India to say what was the cost, benefit, and impact of the dam, and what was the situation before dam and post dam, and was it a beneficial proposition or not? Because a river that flows provides a lot of services. There are social services, there are cultural services, there are economic services. The groundwater recharge that the river does is such a huge economic service. And so many different others, the biodiversity, the fisheries. So Hilsa, you used to find Hilsa is the biggest, you are Bengali. You know how important Hilsa is. Hilsa has been completely destroyed upstream of Farakka.
We know that.
And there used to be Hilsa right up to Kanpur and Allahabad and even beyond.
Absolutely. And even the the size of the catch, the size of each of these fish, all that has become so very different right now.
Yeah, so our fisheries are very bad shape, riverine fisheries, but the potential is huge.
Yes.
So the point is that it is possible for us to not build dams, and it is possible for us to also evaluate whether the dams, we can't just wish away the dams, they are there. But at least we have to start being scientific, democratic, informed about the new dams we take up, and secondly, even about the old dams, particularly the very 50 years, more than 50 years dam, we have to start thinking about decommissioning. We need to have policy for decommissioning. Today, we have no policy for decommissioning. There is no policy in India for decommissioning of the dams, whereas you need a policy like that. So, a policy needs to be put in place, and we need to start thinking on those lines. If we take first step, we will take the second step and third step and fourth step. But we aren't ready to take even the first step.
But how long have these, the ones that have been decommissioned in the US, for example, how old have these dams? Because our dams are about maximum should be around 65 years old or a little bit around.
We have some dams which are more than 100 years old also.
The South Indian ones, the ones, some of them are really, but they are ancient actually. They're heritage value.
Some of them are pretty old. Some of them we don't know the year of build construction also. There are a few hundred dams for which we don't know. India is the third largest dam builder country in the world actually. And there are, if there is Central Water Commission has published a National Register of Large Dams. And if you look at that, there are many dams for which they themselves say we don't know the year of construction. So we are that
ancient in our building.
Keeping records.
Yeah. No, but is it ancient that we have ancient dams, or is it because of lack of paper keeping document?
Both are there. So there are ancient dams also, and there are some dams for which we don't know, but they are definitely more than 50 years old.
So then if we do begin to decommission, as you said, then, these ancient ones would also be, don't you think they would be also lost?
We have to look at the cost. We don't need to be very categorical that every old dam needs to go. We need to look at these dams in terms of the cost, benefit, and impacts, and see which dams need to be decommissioned.
Right.
So we have to. That's what I said. Policy and scientific decision making has to be there.
Okay.
Democratic decision making has to be there. It can't be just categorical rule of thumb that all old dams need to be.
Yeah. So now we just take the last question, sir, if you may. So we know, like after this conversation, there's a lot of things that we've touched and we've not really taken it forward. But just to bring it back to the SDG 6 again, and that 2030 being our target, one size fits all target 2030, and all of these parameters where we have things like toxic foam on our rivers, we have pathogen load, we have a huge amount of undocumented industrial discharge, all of that. What in your view is this one thing we need to do in at least course correction or a revision of SDG 6? I mean, is there a need to look at it differently? Or maybe, you mentioned during our conversation previously that maybe even the rivers should be looked at differently, even the drainage basin should be looked at differently. So what do you think, if this could be our closing question to you, that to wrap it up, what is it that we can do to revise SDG 6 and, of course, these problems?
So, the way I see it is that, there is no one silver bullet, but let me just quickly say a few things which I already mentioned, some of them. Like we need to have an urban water policy, which will inclusive of all the urban rivers. And we need a national river policy. We need groundwater. Groundwater is our water lifeline, but we are not sustaining it. So how do we sustain groundwater? We need to improve governance of groundwater. And governance can happen only at the resource level. The resource of the groundwater happens at the aquifer level. So aquifer level, we need to have governance of the groundwater. We need to have significant institutional architectural change. At the top of our water institutional architecture is an institute called Central Water Commission. But that Central Water Commission is tasked with a lot of contradictory tasks. We need to reconstitute the whole situation. We need to have, as an independent institute, which is only it is tasked with gathering data, good scientific, good quality data, and put it out in public domain every day.
We don't have good quality data?
No, we have very poor quality data in terms of, how much water is there in our rivers? How much silt is flowing in the rivers? What is the quality of our rivers? you will find contradictory. In Himachal Pradesh, there has been a flood disaster in last few week. And if you see 10 newspapers, you will find 10 different figures of people who have died. Imagine, within a week, number of people who have died in one state, we don't have one figure. So our data needs to be monitoring much better, and particularly in water sector, this needs to be an independent institute which does this, and its only interest is in putting out good quality data, put it out in public domain. It has no axe to grind anything, because CWC has a lot of access to grind today, which is in charge of gathering most of the river and water data and so on. Flood forecasting and so, similarly, we need to make IMD much more scientific, because in the climate change context, it needs to we need to have much more, in the environment governance, we need to improve a lot. We need to have expert appraisal committees which are, have independent people. We need to have EIA, which needs to have public scrutiny.
But that would slow down a lot of things, though. I mean, you
not
can't
necessarily.
fast track.
This is a misconception. This total misconception that environment governance will slow down things. In fact, it will improve our decision making. And a lot of wrong. You see, no hydropower project in India today is completing within the stipulated time. Not one. And take the largest capacity under construction, 2,000 megawatt Lower Subansiri project, was supposed to be completed in 2011-12, and it's still not commissioned. And so it's not because of the environment governance. It's because of lack of environment governance.
We've written about the Lower Subansiri project in our magazine as well. And
so it's a pretty bad situation there. So you respect in every context. The more informed decision making we have, more democratic decision making we have, it will not delay. It will improve our decision making. We will take right decisions. And as World Commission on Dams had also said, this is the way forward.
Right. It was very interesting conversation, Mr. Thakkar. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope to connect again later.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
That brings us to the end of today's compelling episode. Through the lens of Mr. Thakkar's deep expertise, we have unpacked the promises and pitfalls of SDG 6 within India's complex water landscape. From questioning the efficacy of large-scale infrastructure to highlighting the exclusionary impacts of commodified water systems, today's dialogue reminds us that just access is not the same as just outcomes. The path forward, as we heard, lies in democratizing decision-making, respecting ecological limits, and recognizing the critical role of local communities in safeguarding water as a commons, not a commodity. We extend our sincere thanks to Mr. Thakkar for his candid and thought-provoking insights. Join us next time on GNY Live for more conversations that connect policy, people, and planet. A detailed blog of this podcast will be soon uploaded on www.geographynu.com. Follow us on Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube so you never miss any episode. Until then, stay aware and stay engaged.